I died clutching that blanket. Not the soft, expensive cashmere throw my sister Vanessa paraded around the house in, the one she'd stolen from my room 3 years ago, claiming it was always meant to be hers. No, I died holding the threadbare, faded thing she'd left behind in the swap, a ratty piece of fabric that had been my grandmother's, the only thing of value our mother had ever given me. Even as the carbon monoxide from the faulty heater filled my lungs, even as my vision blurred and my body grew cold in that basement room they'd relegated me to, I held on to it. It smelled like lavender and old books and the only person who'd ever loved me. When I opened my eyes again, I was 14 years old, sitting at the breakfast table, and Vanessa was bragging about making the cheerleading squad. The shock of it paralyzed me for exactly 3 seconds. Then I looked down at my hands, smooth, unmarked by the years of restaurant work that had left them scarred and calloused. I touched my face, felt the softness of skin that hadn't yet been weathered by exhaustion and malnutrition. My heart hammered against my ribs as the memories crashed over me. 28 years of life, most of them miserable, ending in that freezing basement at age 32 while my family celebrated Christmas upstairs, probably not even noticing the heater had been broken for weeks, probably not even remembering I existed. "Are you going to eat that?" Vanessa's voice cut through my shock. She was already reaching for the bacon on my plate, her perfectly manicured nails, paid for by our parents, of course, gleaming in the morning light. "No," I said, and watched her eyes widen slightly at the firmness in my voice. The old Emma would have mumbled something apologetic and slid the plate over. The new Emma, the one who remembered dying alone and forgotten, had other plans. My mother looked up from her phone, irritation flickering across her face. "Emma, don't be rude to your sister." "I'm not being rude. I'm just not giving her my breakfast." I picked up a piece of bacon and bit into it, maintaining eye contact with Vanessa. Her face flushed red. "Mom?" Vanessa whined, but our mother had already returned to scrolling through her social media, documenting her perfect family life for strangers online, while her older daughter's needs went unmet. I finished my breakfast in silence, my mind racing. I was 14 again. Vanessa was 12. I had 18 years of memories from a future that wouldn't happen. Couldn't happen. Not if I had anything to say about it. I knew every betrayal that was coming, every casual cruelty, every moment where my family would choose Vanessa over me, appearances over truth, convenience over love, and I knew exactly when things would get worse. The blanket incident happened when I was 16. Would have happened in my original timeline. Grandmother Clara died when I was 13, leaving me that beautiful cashmere blanket, the one luxury item she'd owned. It was powder blue, soft as clouds, and she'd wrapped me in it every time I visited her tiny apartment, telling me stories about her youth and making me feel like I mattered. The blanket came with a note in her will. "For my Emma, who always listened." In my first life, I'd cherished it. I'd kept it on my bed, wrapped myself in it when the loneliness got too heavy, when my parents forgot my birthday again, or when Vanessa got the lead in the school play I'd auditioned for. It was my comfort, my security, my proof that someone had once loved me. And Vanessa had taken it. She'd walked into my room one day when I was at school, taken the cashmere blanket, and left behind an old, worn quilt that had been in the linen closet. The one with stains and holes, the one that smelled musty no matter how many times you washed it. When I'd discovered the swap and confronted her, she'd laughed. "It matches my room better," she'd said, as if that were reason enough. "Besides, you don't have friends over. No one sees your room anyway." Our mother had sided with Vanessa. "Don't be so materialistic, Emma. It's just a blanket. Your grandmother would want you to share." But Grandmother Claire's note had said, "For my Emma," not "for my granddaughters." For me. In my first life, I'd cried about it for weeks, then forced myself to accept it, to make do with the ratty replacement. I'd held that torn, faded blanket the night I died, because it was still, in some strange way, connected to the grandmother who'd loved me. It still carried her scent, faintly, underneath the must. This time would be different. This time I had knowledge, I had time, and I had a plan. Let me tell you about my family, about the years that shaped me into the ghost of a girl who died in a basement. My parents, Richard and Melissa Harper, had me when they were young and unprepared. By the time Vanessa came along 2 years later, they'd settled into their careers and their lives. Where I was a complication, Vanessa was a choice. Where I was a reminder of their struggling years, Vanessa represented their success. The favoritism wasn't even subtle. Vanessa got piano lessons, I got hand-me-down books from the library sale. Vanessa got a sweet 16 party with a rented venue. I got taken to dinner at Applebee's with just my parents, where my father spent the whole meal on his phone and my mother critiqued my outfit choices. Vanessa got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass and lectures about responsibility when I asked if I could use the family car to get to my part-time job. Emma, you need to understand, my mother had said during one of these lectures in my first life, when I was 17 and desperate for any scrap of support. Your sister has opportunities. She's been scouted by colleges for her cheerleading. She needs to focus on her future. You're going to be fine. You're practical. Practical, that was their word for unwanted. Practical meant I should be grateful for the basement room when Vanessa wanted to expand her bedroom into my old space. Practical meant I should take out loans for community college while they saved for Vanessa's university fund. Practical meant I should accept that my needs came last, always, forever. Grandmother Claire had been the only one who saw me, really saw me. She'd been my father's mother, and she'd never forgiven him for the way he treated me. That girl has stars in her eyes, she'd told him once during one of the Sunday visits she insisted on. I'd been 9, reading in the corner while the adults talked, pretending not to listen. You're dimming them, Richard. You and that wife of yours. My father had been furious. The visits had become less frequent after that, though Grandmother Claire still called me every week, still sent me birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, still told me I was special. When she died, I'd been devastated. When I learned about the blanket, I'd been grateful. One piece of her, one tangible reminder that I'd been loved. And then Vanessa had taken it. In my first life, that theft had been the beginning of the end. Not because of the blanket itself, but because of what it represented. Even the things meant specifically for me weren't sacred. Even the love of a dead grandmother could be appropriated by Vanessa's endless need for more. After that, I'd stopped fighting. I'd accepted the basement room. I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for community college while living at home, contributing to rent while Vanessa's university was fully funded. I'd watched Vanessa fail out of her expensive school, too many parties, too little discipline, while I graduated with honors from a program no one in my family bothered to attend. The heater in the basement had been broken for 3 months before I died. I'd mentioned it twice. We'll get to it, my father had said, not looking up from his newspaper. He never got to it. Carbon monoxide is odorless. You just get tired, then confused, then you slip away. They found me 2 days after Christmas. I'd missed the family gathering, not that anyone had checked on me during the actual holiday. I'd been alone in the basement for 48 hours before Vanessa came down to look for a pair of shoes she'd stored there and found my body. In the haze of my dying moments, I'd heard her scream. I'd felt a bitter satisfaction that at least she'd be the one to find me, to live with that image. Then everything had gone dark, until I woke up at 14 with a second chance. The first few days after my rebirth were disorienting. I kept expecting to wake up dead, to find that this was some elaborate dream my oxygen-starved brain had conjured in those final moments. But it was real. My body was young and healthy. My grandmother was still alive, would be for another year. I had time. I had to be smart about this. In my first life, I'd been passive, accepting whatever scraps my family threw my way, believing that if I just tried hard enough, was good enough, quiet enough, they'd eventually see my worth. Now I knew better. They would never see me. Not the way I needed them to, but I could see them clearly. And I could plan. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. I bought a journal, used my own money from the small allowance Grandmother Claire sent me, and I began writing down every incident of favoritism, every casual cruelty, every moment where my needs were dismissed in favor of Vanessa's wants. I didn't know exactly how I'd use this information, but I knew I'd need proof eventually. People like my parents were experts at gaslighting, at rewriting history to paint themselves as devoted parents who'd been blindsided by an ungrateful daughter. I wouldn't let them control the narrative this time. The second thing I did was start saving money. Every dollar of my allowance, every gift from Grandmother Claire, every penny I earned from odd jobs, babysitting, tutoring, helping neighbors with yard work, went into a secret account I opened at a bank across town. I told no one about it. In my first life, I'd been careless with money, trusting that my parents would help me when I needed it. That trust had been misplaced. This time, I'd build my own safety net. The third thing I did was focus on school with laser precision. I'd been a good student in my first life, but not exceptional. I'd let Vanessa's constant social drama and my parents' indifference drain my energy. This time, I poured everything into my grades, my extracurriculars, my college applications. I joined the debate team, the science club, the academic decathlon. I tutored other students for extra money and for the teacher recommendations I'd need later. "You're certainly studious lately," my mother observed one evening, 4 months into my new life. We were at dinner, one of the rare occasions when the whole family ate together. Vanessa was talking about some boys she liked, and I was reviewing flashcards. "Is this about college? Because you know we can only afford to send one of you to a good school, and Vanessa, I'll get scholarships." I interrupted, not looking up from my cards. "Don't worry about it." "Well, that's practical," my father said, and I heard the approval in his voice. Approval for not being a burden, not for my ambition or my hard work. It stung less than it had in my first life. I was immunized against their indifference now, inoculated by death and rebirth. Vanessa was staring at me with narrowed eyes. She'd noticed the change in me, the way I no longer flinched when she took things from my room, no longer begged for scraps of parental attention. It unsettled her. Good. When I was 15, Grandmother Claire fell ill. In my first life, I'd been devastated, spending every free moment at her hospital bedside, reading to her, holding her hand, telling her about school. This time I did. The same, but I also did something different. I talked to her about the future. "Grandma," I said one afternoon when we were alone, her frail hand in mine, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." Did you know about how Mom and Dad treat me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I knew. I tried, Emma. I tried to talk to your father, but he's—" She trailed off, unable to voice what we both knew, that her son had failed me in every way that mattered. "I'm going to be okay," I told her, squeezing her hand. "I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to get out." "I know you will," she whispered. "You're stronger than all of them. You have my blood in you, Emma. My mother, your great-grandmother, she came to this country with nothing and built a life. That strength is in you, too." She died 3 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep. The blanket came to me again along with the note. This time, I was ready. I took the blanket home and immediately took photos of it. Close-ups of the tag, the stitching, the powder blue color. I photographed Grandmother Claire's note with the blanket, making sure the date and her signature were clearly visible. Then I wrote my own note, addressed to my future self, describing the blanket's sentimental value, its provenance, and my intention to keep it forever. I dated it, signed it, and tucked it away with all my other documentation. Then I hid the real blanket. I'd learned in my first life that nothing in my room was safe from Vanessa's acquisitive gaze. She went through my things regularly, taking what she wanted, justifying it with whatever excuse came to mind. This time, I wouldn't give her the chance. I bought a cheap storage unit across town using my saved money, the kind you could rent month to month with cash, no questions asked. I put the blanket there along with other valuables, jewelry from Grandmother Claire, photo albums, important documents. The things that mattered to me, the things I wouldn't let Vanessa destroy or steal, went into that storage unit. In place of the cashmere blanket, I put a similar-looking throw on my bed, one I'd found at a thrift store for $10. It was the same powder blue color, similar texture, but cheaper quality. To a casual observer, it would pass. I waited for Vanessa to take the bait. It happened on a Saturday morning, 6 months after Grandmother Claire's death. I was at a debate tournament. I'd made sure to sign up for an all-day event that would keep me out of the house. I'd also made sure to mention, casually the night before, that I'd be gone. "Finally getting out of the house for once?" Vanessa had said, her tone mocking. "Must be nice not having a social life. No one to miss you." I'd smiled blandly. "Must be nice having so much free time on weekends." "What are you doing tomorrow?" "Just hanging out. Maybe redecorating my room." She'd looked at me strangely when she said it, like she was testing me. I'd shrugged. Sounds fun. When I came home that evening, the cheap blanket was gone from my bed. In its place was the old torn quilt, the same one from my first life, stained and musty. I stood in my doorway looking at it and felt a fierce satisfaction bloom in my chest. She'd done it. She'd taken the bait. I walked to Vanessa's room. The door was open. She was always careless about that, confident that no one would dare enter her space uninvited. The blanket was draped artfully over her bed, catching the afternoon light from her window. "Oh," I said from the doorway, "that's where my blanket went." Vanessa spun around, startled. Then her expression hardened. "It's mine now. It matches my room better anyway." That was Grandmother Claire's blanket. She left it to me specifically. And she's dead. She doesn't care. Besides, you have that quilt. That's good enough for you. "Mom," I called, keeping my voice level. "Can you come here?" Our mother appeared in the hallway, irritated at being summoned. "What is it? I'm on a call with the HOA." Vanessa took Grandmother's blanket from my room. My mother glanced between us, her expression already settling into familiar lines of exasperation. "Emma, don't be dramatic. It's just a blanket." "It was specifically left to me in Grandma's will." "Your grandmother wanted you to share," my mother said. The same line from my first life, the script never changing. "Don't be selfish." The note said for my Emma, not for my granddaughters. I kept my voice calm, factual. Vanessa took it without asking and left me with an old quilt. "The quilt is fine," Vanessa snapped. "Stop being such a baby about it." I looked at my mother. "So, she can just take things that were specifically left to me?" "Emma, I don't have time for this sibling squabbling. Work it out between yourselves." She turned to leave. "Okay," I said, I'll remember that." Something in my tone made her pause and look back at me, her eyes narrowing. But I just smiled and went back to my room. This was the moment, I realized, standing in my basement room with the torn quilt on my bed, where my first life's trajectory had been sealed. The moment I'd accepted that nothing was mine, that I had no rights in this house, that I would always come second, but I wasn't accepting it, not this time. Let me explain what that blanket represented to Vanessa. It wasn't about the comfort or even the beauty of it, though she certainly enjoyed those aspects. It was about power. Taking something that was mine, something with sentimental value, and claiming it as hers, that was how Vanessa asserted dominance. It was a pattern that would continue in my first life. She'd borrow my clothes without asking and return them damaged. She'd tell my friends embarrassing stories about me at parties. She'd apply to the same colleges as me just to make sure our parents' financial support went to her applications and not mine. The blanket was symbolic. By taking it and by my parents allowing her to take it, the family structure crystallized. Vanessa's wants would always supersede my needs. My feelings, my boundaries, my autonomy were all secondary to keeping Vanessa happy. In my first life, I'd internalized this. I'd become smaller and smaller, taking up less space, asking for less, expecting less, until I'd literally faded from their awareness, until I'd died alone in a basement while they celebrated upstairs. Not this time. Over the next 2 years, I executed my plan with patient precision. I continued to excel academically, graduating as valedictorian of my high school class. I applied to universities across the country, schools that offered full scholarships to students with my grades and test scores. I won competitions, earned awards, built a resume that would have made Grandmother Claire proud. And I watched Vanessa. She continued her pattern from my first life. Initial success followed by slow decline. She made the cheerleading squad, became popular, dated the right boys. But her grades slipped. She got caught drinking at parties. She was suspended once for cheating on a test, though my parents somehow got that removed from her record through a generous donation to the school. "Emma, can you help your sister with her homework?" my mother would ask, and I'd refuse. "I have my own work to do." "Don't be selfish. Vanessa has cheerleading practice and doesn't have as much time as you." "She has the same 24 hours I do. How she spends them is her choice. These small rebellions drove my mother crazy, but she couldn't quite articulate why. I was being perfectly reasonable after all. I just wasn't sacrificing myself on the altar of Vanessa's needs anymore. My father barely noticed. He never had. When college acceptance letters arrived, I got into every school I applied to, most with full-ride scholarships. Vanessa got into her safety schools only, and even those were conditional on her improving her grades. Emma got into Stanford. I overheard my mother telling someone on the phone, her voice flat and confused, as if she couldn't quite process this information. Full scholarship. We didn't even know she'd applied. I chose Stanford. It was across the country, as far from my family as I could get while staying in the continental U.S. I'd majored in computer science in my first life, had struggled through community college while working full-time, barely scraping by. This time, I'd have resources, time, freedom. This time, I'd thrive. But before I left, I had one more thing to do. I went to Vanessa's room one evening in late August, right before I was set to leave for California. She was packing for her own school. She'd gotten into a state university after my parents had pulled strings and made donations. The powder blue blanket was still on her bed, looking somewhat worse for wear. Vanessa hadn't taken care of it the way I would have. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I said from her doorway. She looked up, surprised. "We barely spoke these days." "Okay." "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me an important lesson. About family, about worth, about what really matters." She narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "What are you talking about?" "You took grandmother's blanket. Mom and Dad let you keep it. You all taught me that nothing is sacred, that I can't trust any of you, that I need to rely only on myself." I smiled. It was a valuable lesson, probably the most valuable thing any of you ever gave me. "Are you being weird or are you trying to be deep?" Vanessa scoffed. "Either way, it's annoying. Can you leave?" "I'm busy." "Enjoy the blanket, Vanessa. Take good care of it." I turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and that's not actually grandmother's blanket. That's a $12 throw I got from Goodwill. I hid the real one before you could take it. But the fact that you took even the fake one, the fact that Mom and Dad let you, told me everything I needed to know." I left her there, sputtering, and went downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen. "I'm leaving early tomorrow morning," I told her. "My flight is at 6. "Do you need a ride to the airport?" "No, I've arranged an Uber." She nodded, distracted. "Well, good luck at Stanford. Make sure you call sometimes." I knew I wouldn't call. I knew she wouldn't notice. Stanford was everything I'd hoped for and more. I threw myself into my studies, into research projects, into internships with major tech companies. I made friends, real friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for how much I could sacrifice for them. I dated, cautiously at first, learning to trust that not everyone would treat me as disposable. I went home for holidays the first year, partially to keep up appearances, partially to check on my trajectory. Vanessa was struggling at her university, just as she had in my first life. She'd already changed majors twice and was on academic probation. My parents were stressed about money. They'd overextended themselves financing her lifestyle and were facing the reality that she might not graduate at all. "Emma, you're doing so well at Stanford," my mother said over Thanksgiving dinner, her tone almost accusatory. "Your father and I were wondering if you might contribute to Vanessa's tuition. You know you're on full scholarship, so you have more flexibility." I looked at her calmly. "No. No? No, my scholarship covers tuition, but I still have living expenses, books, and my own future to plan for. Vanessa's education is your responsibility, not mine." "But she's your sister," my father interjected, speaking up for the first time all evening. "Family helps family." "Does it?" I asked quietly. "That's interesting, because when I needed help, when I asked for anything, the answer was always that I needed to be practical, to make do, to not be a burden. So I learned. I'm being practical now." The table fell silent. Vanessa was staring at her plate, her face red. My parents looked uncomfortable, unable to argue with my logic, but resentful of my refusal nonetheless. I didn't go home for Christmas that year, or the next. I found internships, research opportunities, reasons to stay in California. My family called less and less frequently. I was fine with that. In my junior year at Stanford, I landed an internship at a major tech company. In my senior year, they offered me a full-time position starting after graduation, with a salary that made my parents' combined income look modest. I accepted. I was 22 when I bought my first property. It wasn't a house, not yet. It was a small condo in Mountain View near my new job. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, but it was mine. Completely, utterly mine. I'd saved my internship money, invested wisely using everything I'd learned in my first life, and had enough for a down payment. The day I got the keys, I sat on the floor of my empty condo and cried. Not sad tears, tears of relief, of triumph, of vindication. I'd done it. I'd built a life. I'd made myself safe. And I'd done it all without them. By the time I was 25, I'd been promoted twice and was leading a team at my company. I bought a house, a real house, 3 bedrooms, a yard, in a nice neighborhood. I furnished it carefully, choosing each piece deliberately. Everything in it was mine, chosen by me, reflecting my taste. And I bought a blanket. A beautiful, expensive cashmere throw in powder blue, softer and more luxurious than Grandmother Claire's had ever been. I kept it on my couch, and every time I wrapped myself in it, I thought about how far I'd come. I didn't hear much from my family during these years. Brief phone calls on birthdays and holidays, awkward exchanges of information with no real substance. My mother would occasionally send emails with photos of Vanessa at her graduation. She'd finally finished college after 6 years. Vanessa at various social events. Vanessa with a boyfriend. I never sent photos back. Let them wonder. Then one day when I was 27, I got a call from Vanessa. Not our parents, Vanessa herself. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Emma? Her voice sounded strained. It's Vanessa. I know, what do you want? I need help. Of course she did. What kind of help? Financial help. I'm in debt. Credit cards, student loans, car payments. I can't keep up. Mom and Dad are tapped out. They're actually underwater on the house. I didn't know who else to call. I sat back in my home office chair, looking out at my yard, where I'd planted a garden that spring. How much debt? 80,000. I whistled. That's a lot. How did you manage that? Does it matter? Her voice turned defensive. I'm your sister. I need help. You're right. It doesn't matter. And no. No? No, I'm not going to bail you out of debt you created through your own poor decisions. Figure it out yourself. That's what I had to do. You had scholarships. You had it easy. I laughed, actually laughed. I had scholarships because I worked my ass off for them. I had it easy? Vanessa, I lived in a basement. You took my dead grandmother's blanket and our parents sided with you. You got every advantage, every opportunity, every dollar of support, and you squandered all of it. That's not my problem to fix. You're so selfish, she screamed. You always have been. Mom was right about you. Probably, but I'm selfish with my own money, my own life, my own peace. You were selfish with other people's resources and affection. There's a difference. I paused. Don't call me again unless it's an emergency. And debt from your own bad choices doesn't count as an emergency. I hung up. She didn't call again, but my mother did 6 months later. Emma, we need to talk about Vanessa. No, we don't. She's struggling. She's been diagnosed with depression. She's living with us again because she lost her apartment. Your father and I are getting older and we can't support her forever. As her sister, I'm going to stop you right there, I said, cutting her off. I don't owe Vanessa anything. I didn't create her problems. I'm not responsible for fixing them. You and Dad made your choices about how to raise us, how to allocate your resources and attention. Those choices had consequences. These are them. How can you be so cold? She's your sister. She stopped being my sister when she stole from me and you let her. She stopped being my sister through 1,000 small cruelties that you enabled and encouraged. You taught her that she could take whatever she wanted from me, that my boundaries didn't matter, that I existed to serve her needs. Well, she can't take from me anymore. I'm beyond your reach. We gave you everything. You gave me nothing that mattered, but that's okay. I gave myself everything I needed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual family to attend to. I wasn't lying. I'd started dating Marcus seriously, and his family was warm, functional, and kind. They treated me like I mattered. Goodbye, Mom. I blocked their numbers after that. All of them. I changed my email, locked down my social media, made myself unreachable. The relief was immediate and profound. I was 30 years old when I got married. Marcus came from a big, loving family who welcomed me with open arms. His mother cried when she met me, hugged me tight, and whispered, "I'm so glad he found you." His father taught me to garden, shared his woodworking hobby with me, treated me like the daughter he'd always wanted. At my wedding, when they asked about my family, I said simply, "They couldn't make it." Marcus knew the truth. I'd told him everything about my first life, the rebirth, the years of abuse and neglect. He believed me, or at least he believed that I believed it, and he understood that whether literal or metaphorical, the pious he. Truth was that my family had failed me. "You have us now," his mother said, squeezing my hand. "Yep, you'll always have us." I was 31 when I got pregnant, 32 when my daughter was born. I held her in my arms, this perfect tiny human, and made a promise. She would always know she was loved. She would always know she was wanted. She would never question her worth. I named her Claire. It was around this time that my past caught up with me, or rather, I went looking for it. I hired a private investigator, curious about what had happened to my family in the years since I'd cut them off. The report came back detailed and damning. My parents had filed for bankruptcy 2 years prior. They'd lost the house, the one I'd lived in, the one with the basement where I'd died in my first life. They were renting a small apartment now, both working past at retirement age to make ends meet. Vanessa was still living with them. She was 30 years old, unemployed, and from what the investigator could determine, had burned through every opportunity she'd ever been given. She'd been fired from multiple jobs for poor performance or attendance. She'd cycled through relationships that all ended badly. She'd gained weight, lost her social circle, spent most of her time online complaining about how unfair life was. And according to the photos the investigator had taken through their apartment window, she still had that powder blue blanket, the fake one. It was worn now, nearly threadbare, draped over the couch in their small living room. She'd kept it. After everything, after all these years, she'd kept the symbol of what she'd taken from me. Except it wasn't even real. It was a cheap imitation, just like the life she'd built for herself. The irony was exquisite. I looked at the photos spread across my desk. My parents looking older and diminished, Vanessa looking bitter and defeated, that blanket a faded remnant of better days. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger. Just a distant recognition that these people had once had power over me, and now they had none. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, coming into my office with Claire on his hip. Our daughter was babbling, reaching for me with chubby hands. I took her, held her close, breathed in her baby smell. "I'm perfect." And I was. But the story doesn't end there. It never really ends, does it? The past has a way of reaching into the present, especially when you've left loose threads dangling. When I was 34, I got a call at my office. My assistant, knowing I didn't take calls from family, almost didn't put it through. But the woman on the line wasn't from my immediate family. "Ms. Harper, this is Sarah Chen. I'm a social worker with County Adult Protective Services. I'm calling about Richard and Melissa Harper. They've listed you as next of kin." My blood ran cold. "What happened?" "They were both hospitalized last week. Your father had a heart attack. Your mother had a stroke. They're stable now, but they require significant ongoing care. There's also the matter of your sister, Vanessa. She's been living with them and is unable to care for herself independently. We need to discuss care arrangements and financial support. No, I said flatly. I'm sorry? No, I'm not arranging care. I'm not providing financial support. I'm not taking responsibility for any of them. We've been estranged for over a decade. They made their choices. I've made mine. Ms. Harper, I understand family relationships can be complicated, but these are your parents. These are the people who gave birth to me and then spent my entire childhood treating me as an afterthought while doting on their younger daughter. These are the people who allowed that daughter to steal from me, to belittle me, to make my life miserable. These are the people who let me live in a basement with a broken heater. I stopped, realizing I was referencing my first life, not this one. But the emotion was real. They made their choices. I don't owe them my resources or my peace of mind. There was a long pause. I see. Well, I'm required to inform you that without family support, they'll likely end up in state-funded facilities. Your sister as well. That's what those facilities are for, people who have no one else. They have you. No, I said quietly. They don't. They never did. They had a daughter named Emma, and they threw her away like garbage. I'm someone else now, someone they can't hurt anymore. I hung up and sat at my desk, shaking. Marcus found me there an hour later. They want me to take care of them, I told him. After everything, they want me to swoop in and save them. He pulled me into his arms. What do you want to do? Nothing. I want to do absolutely nothing. Then do nothing. The social worker made me feel like a monster. You're not a monster. You're someone who survived a monstrous childhood and built a beautiful life despite it. You don't owe your abusers anything, Emma. Not even kindness. He was right. I knew he was right. But guilt is insidious, especially when it's been programmed into you from childhood. I compromised with myself. I hired a lawyer to handle any legal matters that might arise from my parents' situation, making it clear that I would not be providing direct care or financial support, but ensuring that the state handled their cases appropriately. I made sure Vanessa was assessed for disability benefits if she qualified. I did the minimum required by law and conscience and not one thing more. And then I moved on. My daughter grew. Marcus and I had a son 2 years after Claire. We bought a bigger house, one with enough rooms for everyone to have their own space, enough yard for a playset and a vegetable garden. I decorated it with care, filled it with warmth and laughter and love. Every corner of it was intentional, every choice mine. I had a guest room that I kept pristine, soft sheets, good pillows, closet space. Friends stayed there. Marcus's family stayed there during holidays. Sometimes it stayed empty, and that was fine too. It existed as possibility, as welcome, as proof that I had abundance to share with people I chose. I bought blankets too, so many blankets. Cashmere throws in every color, soft quilts from local artisans, weighted blankets for anxiety relief, electric blankets for cold nights. My house was full of them, draped over couches and chairs, folded in cupboards, always available. Marcus teased me about my blanket collection. Compensating for something? He asked once, grinning. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just really like blankets. The truth was more complex. Every blanket I bought, every soft, beautiful, expensive blanket was a small act of reclamation. I had been denied comfort once. Not anymore. Never again. Claire grew into a confident, happy child. She knew she was loved, told me so freely, unprompted, in the way children do when love is their default state. My son, David, was equally secure, equally sure of his place in our family. Mommy, why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa Harper? Claire asked once, when she was 7 and starting to notice that Marcus's parents visited, but mine didn't. I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that can't be fixed. My parents and I are like that. But you have so many people who love you. Daddy, me, Grandma, and Grandpa Chen, Aunt Lisa, Uncle James. You're surrounded by love, sweetheart. That's what matters. Okay, she said simply and went back to playing. For her, it was that easy. She'd never known deprivation, never questioned her worth. She couldn't conceive of a parent who didn't cherish their child. I'd made sure of that. When I was 38, the call came that I'd been half expecting for years. My mother was dead, stroke complications. My father had died 6 months earlier, heart failure. Vanessa was in a state-funded group home where she'd apparently been for the past 3 years. The lawyer handling their estate, such as it was, needed to speak with me about final arrangements and debts. There's no money, he told me over the phone. The estate is actually underwater. They had some life insurance, but it barely covered the funeral costs. Your sister has been appointed a state guardian since she's been deemed unable to manage her own affairs. I'm calling because there are some personal effects, and you're listed as next of kin for those. What kind of personal effects? Photo albums, some jewelry, household items. Nothing valuable. You can claim them if you want, or we can dispose of them. I thought about it. I'll come look at them. Marcus came with me. We drove to a storage facility where the estate lawyer had placed everything. It was a small unit, maybe 10 by 10, filled with boxes and furniture I remembered from my childhood. I walked through slowly, Marcus's hand in mine. There was my mother's jewelry box, costume pieces, nothing real. There was my father's desk, scarred and worn. There were photo albums I opened to find pictures of Vanessa at every age, every milestone documented. I appeared occasionally in the background, an afterthought even in the family photos. And then I found it. In a box marked Vanessa's Things, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, the powder blue blanket, the fake one. The $12 Goodwill throw that Vanessa had stolen all those years ago, thinking it was grandmother Claire's precious gift. It was in terrible shape now. The fabric was pilled and worn thin in places. The color had faded to something between blue and gray. It had been washed so many times that it felt rough instead of soft. But it had been carefully packed, as if it were precious. She'd kept it. Through all the years, all the moves, all the failures and disappointments, Vanessa had kept this blanket. My blanket. Except it had never been mine. Not the real one. She'd stolen a symbol, a fake, and clutched it like a treasure while her life fell apart around her. I held it up and Marcus raised his eyebrows. Is that the fake? I confirmed. She never knew. All these years she thought she'd won. She thought she'd taken something precious from me, but it was worthless, just like everything else she took. What are you going to do with it? I looked at the blanket, really looked at it. It wasn't even good enough to donate anymore. It was garbage, kept past its usefulness by someone who had nothing else of value. Nothing, I said, dropping it back in the box. Let the estate dispose of it. It's not mine. It never was. We left the storage unit without taking anything. I signed papers relinquishing my claim to the estate, such as it was. The lawyer seemed surprised. Most people want something, he said. Some memento of their parents. I already have what I need, I told him. Thank you for handling this. In the car on the way home, Marcus asked, Do you want to visit your sister? I thought about it. Vanessa was in a group home, her life reduced to whatever the state provided. She'd gone from being the golden child, the one with every advantage, to being completely dependent on government assistance. The trajectory was almost too perfect, too poetic. No, I said finally, but there's nothing there for me. She made her choices. I made mine. We're strangers who happen to share DNA. No regrets? I thought about my first life, about dying alone in that basement clutching a torn blanket, about the years of neglect and dismissal and casual cruelty. Then I thought about my current life, my home, my husband, my children, my career, the softness and warmth I'd built for myself. No regrets, I said. Except maybe that I didn't die sooner in that first life so I could get to this one faster. Marcus squeezed my hand. He understood, he always did. We drove home, back to our house full of light and love and blankets. Claire and David came running when we walked in, demanding attention, spilling over with stories from their day with the babysitter. I scooped them up, one in each arm, and buried my face in their hair. "Mommy, you're squishing us," Claire giggled. "Sorry, baby, I just really love you." "We love you too," David said. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" "Absolutely," I said. "Pizza sounds perfect." That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my living room with Marcus. We were on the couch, wrapped together under one of my many blankets, this one a beautiful merino wool throw in deep emerald green. The house was quiet, peaceful. "You know what the best revenge is?" I asked Marcus. "What's that?" "Not needing it," I said. For years, I thought I wanted revenge. I wanted them to see what they'd lost, to regret how they'd treated me, to suffer the way I'd suffered. But the truth is, their suffering doesn't make me any happier. Their regret doesn't heal my wounds. Their loss doesn't fill my cup. So what does? I gestured around us. This. The life I built, the family I chose, the safety and comfort I created for myself. They can't touch this. They can't take it. They're not even relevant to it. I won. You did, Marcus agreed. You absolutely did. The real grandmother Claire's blanket, the actual cashmere one, was still in that storage unit I'd rented at 17. I'd kept the unit all these years, partly because it had become a time capsule of my old life, partly because I'd never quite been ready to deal with it. The next weekend, I went to claim it. The storage unit was exactly as I'd left it 15 years ago. The blanket was in a sealed plastic container, protected from dust and moisture. I opened it carefully and pulled out the powder blue cashmere, and it was just as soft and beautiful as I remembered. More so, maybe, because now I could appreciate it without the taint of family trauma. I brought it home and washed it gently by hand, hung it to dry in the sunshine of my backyard. When it was ready, I folded it carefully and put it on Claire's bed. "Grandma Claire, your great-great-grandmother, wanted you to have this," I told my daughter that night at bedtime. "She was a wonderful woman who loved me very much. She would have loved you too." Claire touched the blanket reverently. "It's so soft." "It is. She had it for a very long time, and she gave it to me, and now I'm giving it to you. That's how family is supposed to work. Love passed down through generations." "I love it, Mommy. I'll take good care of it." "I know you will, sweetheart." I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and turned out the light. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and cried quiet, healing tears. The blanket had made it home, the real one, the one that mattered, and it was wrapped around a little girl who would never doubt that she was loved, who would never have to fight for scraps of affection or basic dignity. I'd broken the cycle. I'd saved not just myself, but the next generation. That was worth more than any revenge could ever be. The years that followed were good ones, not perfect, because life never is, but fundamentally good. I continued to advance in my career, eventually becoming a senior vice president at my company. Marcus's architectural firm grew and thrived. Our kids excelled in school, made friends, tried new activities. We took family vacations, celebrated holidays, created traditions. And I bought blankets, always blankets. It became a running joke among our friends, something they teased me about lovingly. "Emma and her blankets," they'd say, shaking their heads with affection. "There are worse addictions," I'd reply, and they'd laugh, not knowing how true that was. On the anniversary of what would have been my death in the other timeline, December 23rd, I always did the same thing. I'd light a candle and sit quietly for an hour, wrapped in one of my blankets, and think about the Emma who died alone. I'd thank her, in a way, for showing me what not to accept, for teaching me through her suffering what I needed to change. Then I'd blow out the candle and rejoin my family, grateful beyond measure for the second chance I'd been given. When I was 45, I got one final call about Vanessa. She'd died, pneumonia complications. The group home administrator needed to know if I wanted to be involved in the funeral arrangements. "Was she suffering?" I asked. "No, ma'am, she was comfortable. We provided good care." "Then that's all I needed to know. Thank you for taking care of her." We found something in her belongings, the administrator said. A very old blanket. Seems like it was important to her. We weren't sure what to do with it. Throw it away, I said gently. It's not important. It never was. I hung up and sat for a moment, processing. Vanessa was gone. My parents were gone. I was the last one left from that original family unit, the last Harper. Except I wasn't a Harper anymore. I was a Chen now, had been for 13 years. I was Marcus's wife, Claire, and David's mother, part of a family that functioned with love and respect and basic human decency. The Harper family, that toxic, dysfunctional unit that had caused so much pain, was extinct. And I felt relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. That night, I gathered my family in the living room. I need to tell you all something, I said. Marcus looked concerned. The kids looked curious. My birth family is all gone now, I said, and I want you to know that you're my real family. You're the people who matter. You're the ones who showed me what family actually means. I looked at Claire and David. And I want you both to understand, you never have to maintain relationships with people who hurt you, even if they're family. Blood doesn't obligate you to accept abuse. You always have the right to walk away. Are you okay, Mom? Claire asked, ever perceptive at 13. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm free. We had a group hug, the four of us tangled together on the couch under, appropriately, a pile of blankets. My family, my choice, my life. Later that night, after everyone else was asleep, I went to my home office and pulled out the journal I'd kept since I was 14 in this life. Page after page of documentation of small cruelties and casual neglect, of patterns of abuse I'd recorded to ensure I'd never gaslight myself into thinking it wasn't that bad. I didn't need it anymore. I took the journal outside to our fire pit. Marcus had built it himself, a beautiful stone circle where we roasted marshmallows with the kids and told stories. I lit a fire and fed the journal to it, page by page, watching my old pain transform into ash and smoke that drifted up into the night sky. Goodbye, I whispered to the flames. Goodbye to all of it. The last page burned away, and I sat there watching the fire die down to embers. The night was quiet, peaceful. In the distance, I could hear the sound of the wind chimes Marcus had hung from our porch. Soft, melodic, soothing. I went inside, checked on my sleeping children, kissed each of their foreheads. Claire was wrapped in Grandmother Claire's blue blanket, exactly where it belonged. David had kicked his covers off as usual, and I pulled them back up gently. In my bedroom, Marcus was already asleep. I slipped in beside him, and he automatically pulled me close, even in sleep. Safe, loved, home. I thought about the other Emma, the one who'd died clutching a torn blanket in a cold basement. I hoped, wherever she was, she knew that this life was her legacy too. Her suffering hadn't been meaningless. It had shown me exactly what I needed to change, given me the determination to never accept less than I deserved, taught me to value my own worth even when no one else did. She died so I could live. And I'd lived, really lived, in a way she never got to. Thank you, I whispered into the darkness, to her, to fate, to whatever force had given me this second chance. Thank you. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the smell of coffee. Marcus always made it first, strong and perfect. I could hear the kids downstairs arguing good-naturedly about something, their voices full of life and security. I got up and caught my reflection in the mirror. 45 years old, laugh lines around my eyes, a few gray hairs I didn't bother to hide. I looked happy. I looked healthy. I looked like someone who'd been loved. I went downstairs in my pajamas and fuzzy socks, grabbed my coffee from Marcus with a kiss, ruffled David's hair, squeezed Claire's shoulder. We had breakfast together, everyone talking over each other, making plans for the weekend. This was my revenge, if you could even call it that. Living well, living fully, creating a life so beautiful, so full of warmth and love and security that my past couldn't touch it. Building a family that functioned the way families should, with respect and care and genuine affection. Vanessa had kept that torn blanket until the day she died, thinking it was precious, thinking she'd won something by taking it from me. And maybe, in her mind, she had won. She'd gotten the blanket, the attention, the resources. She'd been the golden child, the favorite, the one who mattered. But I'd gotten something so much better. I'd gotten free. I'd gotten wise. I'd gotten strong. And I'd built a life she couldn't even imagine, using skills I'd developed precisely because I'd been forced to rely on myself. The blanket, both the real one and the fake, had been a symbol. She'd kept the fake, clutching onto a worthless thing while her life fell apart. I'd kept the real one safe, protecting what mattered until I could give it to someone who'd cherish it properly. And that really was the whole story. She'd always been focused on taking things from me, on what she could grab and claim. I'd been focused on building something real, something lasting, something true. She'd died with nothing but a tattered fake blanket and a lifetime of regrets. I'd lived and was still living, surrounded by genuine comfort and love. I won. Not by destroying her, she'd destroyed herself with her own choices, enabled by parents who'd never taught her that the world didn't revolve around her needs. Not by revenge, her suffering didn't make me happier, and I'd wasted no energy on causing it. I won by doing something much simpler and much harder. I survived. I thrived. I refused to let their treatment of me define my worth or my future. I took the worst thing that had ever happened to me, dying alone and unloved in a basement, and used it as a roadmap of what to never accept again. And then I built something beautiful. Mom, Earth to Mom! David was waving his hand in front of my face. You're spacing out. Sorry, honey, what were you saying? Can we go to the park today, please? I looked around at my family, all of them looking at me expectantly, all of them secure in the knowledge that I'd say yes, that I'd make time for them, that their needs mattered to me. Absolutely, I said. Let's all go. We can bring a picnic lunch. Can I bring my blanket? Claire asked. The soft blue one? Of course you can, sweetheart. We spent the afternoon at the park, spread out on blankets under a big oak tree, eating sandwiches and fruit and cookies. The kids ran around playing. Marcus and I watched them, hands intertwined, completely content. You seem peaceful, Marcus observed. More so than usual, even. I am, I said. It's finally over, all of it, the past, the pain, the connection to people who never valued me. It's done. I'm just here. Now. With people I chose and who chose me back. That's all that matters, he said, and kissed my temple. Claire came running back, wrapped in a grandmother Claire's blue blanket despite the warm spring day. Mom, look, I'm a superhero. She'd made it into a cape somehow. The most beautiful superhero I've ever seen, I told her, and she beamed at me with uncomplicated joy. That little girl would never know what it felt like to be second best. She'd never understand being dismissed or overlooked. She'd grow up confident and loved the way all children should. I'd made sure of it. And somewhere, in whatever afterlife existed or didn't, I hoped my grandmother Claire could see this. Could see that her blanket had made it to the right person eventually. Could see that the granddaughter she'd loved had built a life worth living, a family worth having. Could see that love, real love, had won in the end. Because it had. Despite everything, against all odds, it had. I'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to me and transformed it into the best life I could imagine. I'd turned pain into purpose, trauma into triumph, loss into love. Vanessa had taken my blanket. I'd bought a house, built a home, created a legacy. And she'd kept that torn blanket until the very end, never knowing it was worthless, never understanding that the real treasure had been within her reach all along, the ability to be loved, to be kind, to build something meaningful. She'd died with nothing. I'd lived with everything. That was my revenge. That was my victory. That was my story. And I wrapped myself in it, warm, soft, and absolutely, completely mine, every single day.